what it does is, as I've said, it creates the read-only, and then says this value from the constructor. All of these are done via compiler, and from the getter it returns the name. This is essentially what happens when we do this. Of course, because this is more verbose, we don't use that often. We use this and initialize that from the constructor. So just to check, if we have execute here and if we try to change the value of name, we'll get in compilation error, because under the hood it is a read-only property which cannot be assigned anywhere other than where it is defined or during construction. So yeah, that's essentially what properties can do. Always use properties. Properties are first-class citizens in C#. So there's another thing, is static members. So static members are, you can think as shared members. Static members doesn't require the object to be created. They are shared across all instances of the type. And this can be helpful in certain situations, but is all can be very problematic in shared, because if the code is not done right, because if not done right, it probably will share data among the instances, which can be problematic in multi-threaded programming, which we will talk about in a later session. It's a very important part of C#'s programming model. But the point is, use static very carefully. Just make sure it does very random work. It's just a utility. If it's just a utility method is perfectly fine, but other than that, it is problematic to be used. So I think we have seen an example here. So let's see the create. What it does, once again, the specifier is as usual. It just ensures, it just says whether it should be exposed or not. If it's public, it is exposed. We put the static keyword, and then we do whatever, we keep the other parts of the method same. So essentially the changes, we put the static keyword there, right? Not only methods, but even the types can be static. For example, we can have static class, which means we cannot create my class, even we cannot see it, but static members can be invoked using the type name, as we have seen in case of create. There's another thing, very useful feature, that is constant. So what constant does is very useful in some situation. So let's say we have this method. I use execute whenever I can. So let's make this quiet for no special reasons. So let's define a public static string. So some value, right? So this is a static data member, not a method. So let's make it a static too. So what we can do here is, first of all, it will be shared among all the instances of type editor, right? But the problematic part is we can change it. We can change it from anywhere, depending on its accessibility, of course, but you can change it anywhere. Sometimes we don't want to do that. What we want is just a constant value. Remember, constants are by definition static, so it will not be allowed. Why? Because as the error says, constant operation is a constant member is immutable, meaning it cannot be changed. So it's very useful in many situations where probably the application needs to define a set of values that doesn't change. So in that cases, we can use the constant members. So there's what we call static constructors. Static constructors are available, can be defined. So let's see the example of editor. If we go to editor, okay, so we can define a static constructor. So first, define a regular constructor. The only difference is it cannot have an access specifier. The reason is it needs to be marked as static. The reason it is important to know why it cannot have access specifier, because the static constructor is invoked by the runtime. We developers don't have any control over it. It is invoked the first time there is a reference to this. There is a code execution that refers to that refers to that type. So we cannot write any code that relies on the static constructor. Probably it is useful if you have static properties. If you have static data members, probably you want to initialize it, then it can be helpful. So if we have this one, let's say, it is perfectly all right to do it here, initialize it here, but do not write any code that relies on the static constructor's execution. It generally ends up having creating bugs, and in fact I have never needed to define a static constructor. So generally speaking, static constructor is not required to be defined, but if you need do it, but use it only for simple cases. Okay, so that's static constructor, and that's generally that's actually all the things that you need to know in terms of how a type should be designed. Those are the mechanics of it. There's a lot of discussion that can be done around how to approach designing a type, but that's out of the scope of the discussion. So yeah, thank you for your patience. Let's discuss more on the